how Great Britain ruled America, and then lost it all. The empire that never slept. Picture the most powerful nation to ever exist on planet Earth. Not America, not Rome, Britain. An empire so vast, so unstoppable, that people said the sun itself was afraid to set on it. It ruled oceans. It ruled continents. It ruled millions of people who never even saw its shores. And then, 13 colonies. A handful of farmers, blacksmiths, merchants with muskets they barely knew how to load. They looked at this empire and said no. What happened next shouldn't have been possible. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why it was one of the most unlikely victories in human history, and why it still shapes the world you're living in right now. Let's go back to where it all began. The 1600s. Europe is obsessed with one thing: land nobody else has claimed yet. Spain already found rivers of silver. France was carving out fur empires in the north. And Britain was watching. And Britain was hungry. It wanted three things, and it wanted them badly. Resources: wood, fur, tobacco, cotton, things England was running out of and desperately needed. Trade. Every new colony was a new source of wealth flowing straight back to the crown. Power, because whoever controlled the most land controlled the future. So Britain sent ships, and its first attempt at a colony? It vanished. Completely. An entire settlement at Roanoke disappeared without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a single strange word carved into a tree: Croatoan. Nobody has ever fully solved what happened there, but Britain didn't flinch. In 1607, a new colony rose in Virginia, Jamestown, and it nearly died too. Starvation was so severe that colonists were reduced to eating shoe leather, and, according to grim historical accounts, worse than that. Most of the original settlers didn't survive the first few years, but one crop saved it: tobacco. Suddenly, this colony wasn't a graveyard, it was a gold mine. Then, in 1620, a ship called the Mayflower landed a group of religious exiles in the wrong place entirely, in the freezing wilderness of Massachusetts. Half of them wouldn't survive the winter. The ones who did survived only because indigenous people taught them how to grow food in land that wasn't theirs. That harvest became the story we now call Thanksgiving. And from there, colony after colony rose along the coast. 13 of them in total. Each one different, each one growing, each one, quietly, becoming something Britain never fully expected. A new kind of society. People flooded in from across Europe: England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany. Some ran from religious persecution. Some chased land they could never own back home. Some sold years of their freedom just to afford the boat ticket. And some had no choice at all, kidnapped, chained, and shipped from West Africa in one of history's greatest crimes, forced into slavery that would fuel plantations across the southern colonies for generations. That truth doesn't get to be a footnote. The wealth, the cotton, the tobacco fortunes flowing back to Britain, much of it was built on the backs of people who never consented to any of it. And on top of that brutal foundation, colonial society grew fast. Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Charleston, bustling ports, local governments, newspapers, universities, a new identity forming, not fully English anymore, something else. Britain loved it. More colonies, more profit, more power. But there was a problem Britain didn't see coming. These colonists weren't just workers anymore. They were starting to think for themselves. And that was the beginning of the end. The war that changed everything. It didn't start with a rebellion. It started with a war Britain actually won. In 1754, Britain and France collided over territory in the Ohio Valley. A brutal fight known in the colonies as the French and Indian War, part of a much larger global conflict. A young colonial officer fought in one of its opening skirmishes. His name was George Washington. Remember that name. It's going to matter a lot. By 1763, Britain crushed France and seized enormous new territory. On paper, it was a total triumph. But victory came with a price tag Britain didn't expect. A debt so massive, it nearly broke the treasury. And Britain reached a conclusion that would set the entire continent on fire. The colonies benefited from this war, so the colonies would pay for it. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. The taxes came fast, and they came without warning. The Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, a tax on almost every piece of paper colonists touched. Newspapers, legal documents, even playing cards. The Townshend Acts, taxing glass, paint, paper, tea. And the colonists weren't just angry about money. They were angry about something far more dangerous. They had no voice, no vote, no representative anywhere near the room where these decisions were made. Laws about their lives were being written thousands of miles away by men who'd never see the land they were taxing. One sentence began spreading through taverns, pamphlets, and street corners like wildfire. No taxation without representation. Boycotts began. Secret groups like the Sons of Liberty started organizing, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. Britain panicked and pulled a few taxes back, but it refused to let go completely, and that stubbornness was about to cost it everything. March 1770, Boston. A crowd surrounds a small group of British soldiers. Tension boils. Someone throws something. A shot cracks through the cold air, then another, and another. 5 colonists lie dead in the snow. The Boston Massacre becomes an instant legend, retold, redrawn, and reprinted across the colonies until the entire population knows exactly one version of events: British soldiers murdering innocent Americans in the street. Then, in December 1773, colonists strike back in a completely different way. Under cover of darkness, disguised, a group sneaks aboard British ships loaded with tea. They smash open the crates, and they dump every last pound of it straight into Boston Harbor. The Boston Tea Party. It should have been a warning to Britain. Instead, Britain responded with pure force, shutting down Boston's entire harbor, stripping away colonial self-government, forcing colonists to house British soldiers in their own homes. They called it punishment. The colonists called it something else: the final straw. September 1774. For the first time ever, delegates from almost every colony sit down together in Philadelphia. They're not declaring war, not yet. Most still hope this can be fixed, but they agree on something Britain can't ignore: a united boycott, colony standing with colony for the first time in history. Britain's answer? More troops, more force. An attempt to seize colonial weapons before anyone can even think about fighting back. Then, on the night of April 18, 1775, it all comes down to one desperate ride through the darkness. British soldiers march toward Concord to seize a hidden weapons stockpile. A rider named Paul Revere races ahead through the night, warning every town in his path. The British are coming! By morning, on the green at Lexington, colonial militia and British soldiers stand face to face. A shot rings out. Nobody to this day knows for certain who fired it, but it doesn't matter anymore. The war has begun. Let's be honest about what this actually looked like on paper. On one side, the most powerful navy on earth. Professional, trained soldiers. Unlimited funding. Centuries of military experience. Global reach. On the other side, farmers, blacksmiths, shopkeepers. No real army, no navy, no guaranteed money, no guarantee they'd even survive the year. In June 1775, the colonies made their boldest move yet, creating the Continental Army and handing command to that same young officer from years earlier, George Washington. He inherited a disaster. Untrained men from 13 different colonies who barely trusted each other, let alone him. No consistent supplies, no artillery to speak of. And yet, in 1776, the colonies didn't just ask for better treatment anymore. They demanded everything. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed, a radical, dangerous idea written into permanent existence. Governments exist to serve the people, and when they fail, the people have the right to tear them down and start over. 13 colonies had just declared themselves a brand new nation, the United States of America. But saying it and surviving it were two completely different fights. What happened next nearly ended the entire revolution before it started. August 1776. Washington's army is nearly annihilated at the Battle of Long Island, saved only by a desperate, silent nighttime retreat across the river under cover of fog. For the rest of the year, his army is pushed back again and again. Morale collapses. Soldiers desert. Enlistments are about to run out entirely. Most people, on both sides of the Atlantic, expect this rebellion to simply die out with the winter. So Washington does something insane. On Christmas night, 1776, he crosses the icy Delaware River under the cover of darkness and launches a surprise assault on enemy forces at Trenton. It works. It's not a war-ending victory, but it's something the revolution desperately needed. Proof that it wasn't over. But the worst is still coming. That following winter, at a freezing camp called Valley Forge, nearly 2,000 soldiers die. Not in battle, but from hunger, cold, and disease. The revolution is bleeding out in the snow. And somehow, it's about to be saved by something nobody in America controls. October 1777, New York. An entire British army is surrounded, trapped, and forced to surrender at the Battle of Saratoga. It's the first truly massive American victory of the war. And across the ocean, one country is watching very, very closely. France. France had lost badly to Britain before, and it wanted revenge. Saratoga proves something crucial. These Americans might actually win. So in 1778, France does the unthinkable. It formally allies with the United States, sending money, soldiers, weapons, and its navy. Overnight, this stops being a colonial rebellion. It becomes a global war. Britain isn't just fighting Americans anymore, it's fighting France, then Spain, then the Netherlands. All at once, stretched across oceans it can no longer fully control. Meanwhile, at Valley Forge, a Prussian officer named Baron von Steuben arrives and does something remarkable. He turns Washington's broken, freezing army into an actual professional fighting force. The army that walks out of that winter is not the same army that walked in. Unable to crush the rebellion in the north, Britain shifts its entire strategy south, betting on loyalist support. At first, it works. Savannah falls. Charleston falls. It looks like Britain might finally be turning the tide. But something brutal is unfolding in the Carolinas. Vicious guerrilla-style warfare, ambush after ambush between patriot and loyalist militias who often know each other personally, neighbor against neighbor. American General Nathaniel Greene refuses to fight the kind of battle the British want. Instead, he retreats, strikes, retreats again, never letting the British destroy his army in one decisive blow, but bleeding them piece by piece, battle after battle. British General Cornwallis keeps winning, technically. But he's losing men, supplies, and time with every single victory. Exhausted, he makes one final decision, a decision that will end the entire war. He marches his army into a small Virginia tobacco port to wait for reinforcements. Its name is Yorktown. Here's where everything collides at once. Washington and French General Rochambeau march their combined armies south in total secrecy, encircling Cornwallis at Yorktown by land. At the exact same time, a French fleet under Admiral de Grasse smashes the British Navy at the Battle of the Chesapeake, sealing off any chance of escape by sea. Cornwallis is trapped, completely, surrounded on land, blockaded at sea, pounded by artillery day after day with nowhere left to run. On October 19, 1781, he surrenders his entire army. Legend says that as British troops marched out to lay down their weapons, their band played a tune called "The World Turned Upside Down." It's hard to imagine a more fitting soundtrack, because it truly had. Word of Yorktown reaches London, and the reaction is instant chaos. The British government collapses under the political fallout. The will to keep fighting simply evaporates. Peace talks begin, and in 1783, Britain signs the Treaty of Paris, formally admitting what once seemed impossible. The United States of America is free. The empire that ruled the seas had just lost 13 of its richest colonies to farmers with muskets. So how does the strongest military on the planet lose to a country that didn't even exist a decade earlier? Distance. Every order from London took months to arrive. By the time Britain reacted to events in America, those events had already changed completely. Terrain. The colonists knew their own land. They used it. Ambushes, hit-and-run tactics, refusing to fight the massive, decisive battles Britain was built to win. Alliances. Once France, Spain, and the Netherlands joined the fight, this stopped being a rebellion. It became a world war Britain was fighting on every front at once. Endurance. Washington lost more battles than he won, but he had one skill no British general could match: the ability to keep his army alive, intact, and moving forward through absolute disaster. And the final reason, the one that decided everything: belief. This wasn't just about taxes anymore, it was about an idea. And ideas, it turns out, are almost impossible to defeat with muskets alone. Losing America didn't destroy the British Empire. Shockingly, it kept growing. Into India, Australia, huge parts of Africa, expanding for another century. But America faced its own reckoning. Its first system of government nearly fell apart within a few years, forcing the creation of an entirely new constitution in 1787. The same framework, with amendments, still governing the country today. And underneath all of it, a brutal contradiction remained buried in the foundation. A nation built on the words liberty and self-governance still allowed slavery to expand for nearly another 100 years, a wound that would eventually explode into civil war. The revolution wasn't the end of the story. It was only the opening chapter. The legacy. So here's the full picture. A tiny island built the most powerful empire the world had ever seen, through resources, trade, and raw power. It planted colonies across an ocean. Those colonies grew, changed, and quietly stopped thinking of themselves as British at all. And then, against every rational expectation, those colonies, with the help of Britain's own rivals, defeated the mightiest military force on the planet. They didn't just win a war, they proved something the world had never really seen proven before: that ordinary people, if they believe strongly enough in an idea, can bring down an empire. So here's the question worth sitting with, long after this video ends. If it happened once, to the single most powerful empire on Earth, could it happen again? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if this story pulled you in, hit subscribe, because history is full of moments exactly like this one, still waiting to be told.